Hey guys, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. I'm your host, Chris Jones, where today I am joined by Eric Rosenberg, a finance, travel, and technology writer based in Ventura, California. You guys are going to love Eric. Eric is one of those guys who's just like you and I, where he made the conscious decision to start writing while he had a day job. He was working in a bank and decided, hey, I want to start a side hustle. I'm going to blog. And Eric blogged himself to six figures, eventually leaving his job. And I'll let him tell you the story. It's a very humorous story about how and why and when he left his job. But Eric is the proof. He tells you exactly how he does it, what you need to do, and best practices for turning your side hustle blog into full-time six-figure income. So without further ado and without delay, here's my interview with Eric Rosenberg. Hey, Eric, great to have you on the Art and Business of Writing podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked to have you today. So I'd like for you just to take a minute to dive into your bio a little bit. Take us deeper.
So it all starts in February 1985. No, I'm not going to go back that far. I'm just kidding. So my background, growing up, I had my dad, actually my family owned a video store. So I was always around entrepreneurship and business owners. My grandpa was actually a business school professor. He taught marketing. So I think business was just in my genes growing up. And I took some business classes in high school, thought they were fun, decided to go and join business school in college. I got an undergrad finance degree at the University of Colorado. And I thought, well, what do you do with a finance degree? You become a banker, right? So I went and worked at a bank for a little while. And I was the most junior manager, but I was a manager there. So I was approving mortgage loans and new credit card applications, all sorts of things that go into, a bank relationship you would have with a bank. And I decided eventually, banking's not for me. I moved on to what I call gray cubicle land in corporate finance and accounting. When I left that job in the bank, I had started this little blog as a side hustle. It was called, at that point, Narrow Bridge Adventures, because I didn't know anything about SEO and naming websites. Now it's called Personal Profitability, but it's the same website. And I've had that now for just over 9 years, which I think makes me a dinosaur in blogger years. So I had this site for 9 years and I was building it along the way. And I didn't realize that I was writing a resume for a new career path at the same time that I was writing this blog. I never thought I was going to be a writer. I never had any real interest in being a writer for a living. I know some people dream of that. I actually hated English and language arts classes until my junior year in high school. In my junior and senior year in high school, I had amazing teachers that really, I think, instilled some of what led to my enjoyment of writing that I have now. But I loved this blogging thing, and I kept writing about money and helping people with their money. And I was going to this conference every year called FinCon. It was actually just a few weeks ago from right now when we're recording. And it happens every year. This year it was in Dallas. So I've been to every single FinCon. And I went and I started meeting these other bloggers and meeting some companies who were hiring bloggers. And I learned how to treat my blog like a business. And I remember being so excited the first time I made enough money from an ad to go cover my beer tabs for a night. I was like, this is so cool. I'm making so much money online. I can go out partying with my friends. And I was in my mid-20s, so a bar tab was not necessarily cheap at that point in my life. But over time, companies started to approach me and said, hey, Eric, we like what you're doing. We like what you're writing at your site. Would you write for us? We'll pay you. And I thought, well, heck, you can pay me and I'll write whatever you want. So that's where my freelance writing started to grow. And over time, it grew and grew. And I've been doing income reports at personalprofitability.com since 2012, showing all of my different online incomes. And you can see, if you go back and read through the archives, that freelancing keeps growing and growing and growing along the way. And in 2015, my side hustle income from all of my online activities was just about $40,000 exactly. And that was doing 10 to 20 hours a week or so online. And I thought, if I can do this in 10 to 20 hours a week, imagine what I could do if I did it full time. So a few months later, I had a baby girl. Actually, she was born at the end of 2015. She just turned 2. And partway into 2016, I realized that there were kind of 3 important things in my life, and I could handle any 2 of those, but something had to give. And it was either be a good dad, be a good employee, or be a good business owner. So I was obviously not going to give up being a good dad. I only have one shot to have that relationship with my kids. So that was a given. I was going to spend time with my daughter. So I had to decide, do I stick with this career I've had for a decade in gray cubicles? I was making a good income. I was a senior financial analyst at a good company. I enjoyed my coworkers. I had good benefits, all that stable stuff. And being a senior financial analyst, it's not like I was being paid poorly. But then I had this thing. I was wondering, what if I took this writing thing and really ran with it? So, like any good, responsible dad with a new 6-month-old daughter at home, I quit my job, sold my house, and moved somewhere more expensive. And here I am today.
Wow. That last part, man, what a wild ride.
I have to admit that the day that I gave notice at work and came home that night, I remember after my daughter went to sleep, the lights were out, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, like terrified out of my mind. I was like on the verge of a panic attack. Did I just make the most horrific mistake of my life? But it turned out everything worked out great. I actually went home that first day. My last day at work was April 8th last year, 2016. And I went home and got to my home office. It was a Friday afternoon. And I opened up the laptop and got to work because I knew from that point forward, every dollar I made was based on the work I did. I couldn't just have, butt in chair time and do the minimum to not get fired like an office space. Everything in freelancing is a meritocracy. If you do a great job, you'll get hired again. New clients will find you. If you do a bad job, it only takes one bad article and you lose a client. So every single article I write today, I make sure to do the very best job possible. And right when I left my job, we moved down to Southern California, not too far from where my wife grew up in Santa Barbara. Hence the moved somewhere more expensive thing. We're by my in-laws, which I like my in-laws. They're nice to live by. I know everyone doesn't have that. But I got here and I was actually at that point about 80% of my income was coming from writing and 20% was coming from website development, another freelance side hustle. And I was sitting down looking at my QuickBooks. I'm a finance guy with that finance and accounting background. So I have very meticulous bookkeeping, probably much more excessive than most freelance writers who hate math. But I love math. I love finance. So that's why I became a finance writer, not just a general writer. And I was looking and I realized about 80% of my time and about 90% of my stress were coming from the website design and development that was making 20% of my income, where about 20% of my time was going into freelance writing, and that was actually specifically 76% of my income, so just about 80%. And if you've ever read, listeners, the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, or you're familiar with the Pareto principle, also known as the 80-20 rule, that was so clear to me that I needed to 80-20 what I was working on. So I actually, at that point, I was kind of struggling on income. I wasn't doing what I thought I should be doing yet. I was only 2-3 months out from having quit my job. And I just cut off all the website work that I was doing. I had some recurring clients. I helped them find somewhere else to go. And I took that risk of just walking away from 20% of my income, thinking, well, if I get that 80% of my time back, imagine what I could do with it. And over the next couple of months, my income actually tripled from about $4,000 a month to about $12,000 a month. And I did that for a few months. And ever since, my first 10,000 plus month was October 2016. And I have been over that level every single month since, except 1 month I missed it by $200. But I still made $9,800 that month, so I wasn't complaining.
Wow, dude, that's a great story of how you did that. Now, talk about how you structured your business as a writer, because once you've left corporate America, you made that decision. You had to figure out, well, how am I going to make this viable going forward?
Sure.
How did you structure your business?
Well, in terms of the legal structure, up until from when I started the blog, it was probably a year or two later, I formed an LLC, which I was in Colorado. Then I moved to Oregon and moved it to be an Oregon LLC. But when I quit my job and went full time, I actually realized I learned that there were some tax benefits of being an S Corp or an LLC taxed as an S Corp. Either way, you get the same tax treatment. So when I moved to California, I figured, well, I'm going to have to register a new business anyway. I just did it as an S Corp. And that lets me pay myself a paycheck every week. I actually use a service called Gusto to do all the payroll stuff and make sure I don't break any laws or anything. Because even as a one employee business, you have to follow all the laws, and California has lots of them. I'm technically a California S corp is how my business is structured, and I am the sole employee of that business. So all of the money that the business makes, the clients write it to my business name. It's Narrow Bridge Media, and then I pay myself that salary, and anything over my salary I get to take as a dividend and pay a lower tax rate. So for me, there's some big tax savings, about $5,000 a year from that structure. But really, it's just me as the sole employee. Actually, my wife, she's not technically an employee. She's the legal secretary of the business, because it's a good practice to have multiple people on the board of a business, and there's certain required positions to fill when you have a corporation like I do. So I'm the president and the treasurer, and my wife is the secretary. But in real life, that means once a year we sit down and have a little quote meeting and sign a form that we reviewed the financials together. But really, she's also my number one proofreader. So I proofread all my stuff myself. And then for a valuable client, I want to send, as I said, the very, very best quality product I can. And I have a really, really good error rate. My wife finds on a 1,000-word article, sometimes no errors, sometimes 2 or 3. So, doing a little math in my head, that's like a 0.2 to 0.3% error rate in my typing. But I want it to be 100% perfect rate. So she goes through and helps me clean up those articles before I send it in, just to make sure it has one more read before it goes to a client.
That's solid, man. To go from finance to writing makes you so much sharper than going from writer to finance.
Well, something that I love about it, and I think what gives me a real competitive edge, because the other people who are vying for the same freelance gigs I'm working on, most of them have a journalism background. They went to a journalism school and they write really, really well, but it's kind of empty, it feels like to me, when they write about money, because they don't have that depth of knowledge on finance. Where I have that undergrad finance degree. I didn't mention I picked up an MBA in finance along the way. I actually did that full-time while working full-time. When I was early on in my career, I thought, well, there's never going to be a time it's not good to have an MBA, so I'm just going to do that. And that's what I did. I got my MBA while working full-time and keeping the blog going. So it was quite a hustle there for a while. But I have such real life experience from the bank, and from I've done big investments in part of my MBA. I've been investing for myself for years. So I have all this unique experience with money that most writers don't have. And that's, I think, why I have some of the great success I do. So for anyone who wants to write about any topic, there's something that you write about, or that let's say you don't write about it, there's something more about than almost everyone else in the world. There's got to be at least one thing. For me, personal finance and money, I would like to think I'm in the top tier of knowledge, just based on my education and experience. But that's not the only thing people can write about. There's all sorts of industries. Technology is huge. Engineering. If you can write about anything that's related to the STEM education background, those are all super in-demand skills. And if you can add writing skills on top of that, there is money to be made out there. There are people who want to pay you to share your expertise.
Oh, I absolutely agree. A good portion of my income comes from working in health. So I do a lot of health writing.
Yeah, that's another huge industry. I actually do a little bit of health writing, just more insurance related, because that overlaps with finance. But anything in health and medical, with the aging society today, there's more demand for health knowledge and health information than ever before. And now at people's fingertips, they can find the stuff that we write. It's pretty incredible.
It is. Now, for someone who's starting that side hustle, why is a blog a great avenue? You'd mentioned like digital resume earlier. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so when I started, one thing really cool about the internet and blogging is you don't need anyone's permission. If you have a full-time day job with a boss, pretty much anything you want to do at work, you need someone's permission. Well, you don't need any permission to start a blog. I mean, maybe if you have a full-time job, look at your contract before you start any kind of side hustle. Most people, there's no problem starting one, but there are a few professions, usually like if you're a lawyer at a big law firm or Maybe if you're a doctor at a big hospital, something like that, you might have a non-compete rule or a no outside jobs rule, kind of forbids you from moonlighting, if you will. But most people don't have any restriction like that. And in my background, I never had those restrictions, but I could not write about my employers or what I was doing at work. So I did make sure to keep that all very separate. I never wrote about banking until I was not working in banking. And I never mentioned, I don't think ever in the history of my blog, any former employers by name, except one time. One of my employers doesn't exist anymore, and I had stock in them. So I wrote about what happens when you own stock in a company that gets purchased by another company. But outside of that, I never mention any employers or anything like that. So when you have that big wall up, you can feel pretty safe in your blog writing about whatever topic it is that you know something about. Now, make sure, it's easy to start a personal blog and just kind of write about whatever you feel like writing about. And that can be fun, but that I look at more as a journal. If your blog isn't about one specific topic or a narrow niche topic, it's not really about anything. You can't write about everything. You have to write about something specific. So for me, it was personal finance, and that led, no surprise, to writing opportunities in personal finance. So write about whatever it is you want to be hired to write about, and write at the same quality level that you would think someone would want to hire. So let's say you want to, I'm just going to pick some random hobby. Let's say you are into fly fishing. I know almost nothing about fly fishing. I find fishing to be dreadfully boring, but I know there are so many people out there that love it. So let's say you are into fly fishing and you know everything there is to know about the right flies and the right rods and the seasons and the places to go and licenses. So you could create, the best fly fishing blog out there, and then you can start reaching out to companies that have some overlap with what you're doing. So maybe it's hunting and fishing stores. They do content marketing. They have blogs. Maybe it's manufacturers of flies or fishing rods. There's all sorts of different products and businesses that make money on fly fishing. So you can apply that logic to almost any topic. I mean, there's some topics that are like super, super remote and niche that you might not have people really interested about. I know, let's say you're like a worm farmer. I don't know how many people want to read about worm farming, though there probably is a market for it. But the bigger the market you're writing for, the more competition you're going to have is one thing to think about. So if you can niche down, you'll stand out from that competition. And what's really cool is you can make money from your blog before you even get hired to write for anyone else. There's sites out there. I actually was listening to the Side Hustle podcast that's by Chris Guillebeau. And he was telling the story of someone who started a little blog about hockey goalies, which that is a super, super niche topic if I've ever heard one. But because it's the best blog about hockey goalies in the world, the best website about hockey goalies, it gets linked to a lot. And then he can put ad blocks, like linking to maybe, let's say, Amazon. You can click on a link on his site and buy hockey pads and helmets, things like that. So there are ways to make money before you ever get hired by anyone else. But to me, for what I wanted to do, I was seeing the best financial results from writing for other people, not writing for myself. So I've maintained my own blog and podcast. It's called the Personal Profitability Podcast. So I've maintained both of those just because I love what I do and I love helping people, even though I don't make a ton of money there. But without that, I wouldn't have the six-figure business I have writing for other people. So it all started with that idea of me starting my own personal finance blog. That's where it all blossomed from.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of patience. And I think that sometimes when we dive into blogging and podcasting and writing, I mean, I see it a lot of times when I'm in my groups on Facebook where people are like, hey, how fast does it turn around money? Hey, when should I expect to get paid for this? And it's like, it's kind of a long game.
Totally. Yeah. If you want to get rich quick, starting a blog is not the best option. I don't know. If you want to get rich quick, I don't know what the real best option is, because if we knew, then everyone would be doing it, right?
Absolutely.
That's why they're called get rich quick schemes, not get rich quick strategies. So blogging is a real long-term strategy. So I mentioned I've been doing this for 9 years. It was about 8 years into starting my blog that I finally quit my job and took writing full time. So I like to joke that 8 years of hard work and I was an overnight success because people start noticing when you make 5 figures a month online. But there were all those years before that people weren't noticing that much. And yeah, it was still fun. I still made some money. I did have community, but yeah, there was definitely no get rich quick in blogging, especially today as more spaces become more crowded. Now there's lots of personal finance bloggers. When I started, there were maybe 50. So it's a very different landscape today. But that doesn't mean you can't find your own unique voice and stand out from the crowd. Because if you can generate traffic and build a big audience, you can really do anything. It's all about audience.
No, I totally agree with that. And so the next question I have is, how often should someone write when they start their blog? Did you have like an editorial schedule? Were you just writing when you felt like it? Did you sit down and say, okay, I'm gonna do it once a week, once every 2? What was your methodology?
Yeah. So when I started, I would not follow what I did in the beginning if you were starting today. But what I did, there was a point early on, and again, there were not as many websites. Google was very different. You could write 300 words about whatever credit card or bank account or something and rank number 1 in Google for that. You won't have that anymore. But one thing I did do that I would recommend is I did have a regular editorial calendar. I was writing one new post 5 days a week, which when they're 3, 4, 500 words, that's not a big deal. Nowadays, I'm on a much looser schedule. For my podcast, I release every Tuesday. But for my blog, I do a monthly income report post and then an additional super epic post when I have time. It's tough because I'm juggling clients and my own site. And as I mentioned, I make a heck of a lot more money for my clients than I do on my website. So I want to give the clients the priority over my own site at this point. So my site gets a little less content than it used to. But if I were starting brand new today, I would probably, the first thing I would do before I even get the domain and put your first post on the internet, I would write 8 articles about the topic and see if you really love it. If you can't sit down over a week or so and write 8 articles on the topic, you probably shouldn't start a blog on that topic. But if you find it easy and fun and natural to write those posts, then you have first 8 posts to start your blog with, which is great. And then I would pick some kind of editorial calendar that's predictable for your readers. So whether that's once a week or twice a week or once every other week, I don't think that really matters today. What really matters is that every post you create is really high quality, has something unique and something very interesting about it. If you write something that people would want to read, then you'll do great. But again, remember, you can't just go with the publish and pray approach is what we call it. Just hitting publish and putting it on the internet doesn't mean people will find it. You have to remember to promote it too. That is a huge part of running your own blog. So some people say, you should, for every hour of time you spend writing, you might spend 5 hours of time promoting. So keep in mind, blogging isn't just writing and hitting publish, although that's something I love to do, which makes freelancing even better for me because I do some promotion. I share all my articles on social media and whatnot. But more or less, I write the article and send it to the editor. And once it's done, I don't have to think about that article again. And that's the method I prefer to write. But everyone has different talents, different things they enjoy about writing online. And if you really love that community building and promotion and connection part, blogging is definitely something you would enjoy.
Yeah, no, that's really good stuff. I think just having that schedule is such an important thing. So that you're not flying by the seat of your pants, but you do have something regular so that you know what to report to. Because I think that being structured when you write is an important thing.
Yeah, and if you do pick a schedule, something I'd recommend, share your schedule with your readers or at least a couple friends or family members, because even though they might not hold you accountable by saying, hey, look, you just missed your schedule, by telling someone, you're probably more likely to hold yourself accountable. And you don't want to be a failure in your own eyes, let alone someone else's eyes that you just committed to, you're going to hold to that schedule.
Oh, absolutely. Now, for people who get the imposter syndrome, it's like when it comes to sharing your work, some people are very nervous to share their work. They're wondering when they put it out on social, what are people going to think? Are they going to like it? Are they going to comment on it? Why would anyone want to read my little blog anyway? What do you say to them?
Um, Fake it till you make it. It works for a lot of people, and especially on the internet. It's not like high school where everyone remembers that one time you like wet your pants when you were in first grade. The internet, you can be whoever you want, whatever you want. There are no preconceived notions of you. And honestly, if you get some haters, it probably means you're doing something right. Because if someone has, nothing better to do with their time than to bash your new blog or your new blog post, that means you really got them thinking and feeling something. And if you can get people to think and feel and react, you're on the right track.
Ooh, I like that. Now, how do you keep content fresh and generated? You talked about writing the first 8 pieces. How do you stay ahead of schedule so that you're always writing good stuff and you don't, run out of things in the hopper?
Yeah, so there's lots of different tools out there. Something I like to do personally, whenever I get an idea for a new blog post, I always have my phone with me because it's 2017 and we always have our phones with us. So I use personally Google Keep as the note-taking app I like, because I can just quickly add a note on my phone and then it'll be on my computer when I log in later. There's other options too, like Evernote and different notepads and whatever. So for me, it's just writing down ideas as I come to them. There's also, idea generators. If you Google around, there's one I really like called Answer the Public, where you type in a keyword or a phrase, and it gives you questions people have typed into Google about that topic. So that's a great way to generate ideas. But at the end of the day, it's just you just have to sit down and do it. People complain about writer's block, and I wouldn't say I've ever had quote writer's block. But I think writer's block is really just an excuse for I don't feel like writing or I'm not feeling really motivated. So if you don't feel motivated, figure out why and what would motivate you. So for some people, all they need is a cup of coffee, and they're up and motivated and running fine. Other people might need to get out of the office, get away from the keyboard, go have some good life experiences, and then they come back feeling fresh. So that one's one you just have to really get to know yourself. For me, being freelancing and having deadlines, it doesn't matter if I have writer's block. I have things I have to get done. So just like homework back when you were in college and you didn't have anyone standing over you making sure you got it done, I just have to sit and get it done. It becomes a matter of fact issue for me.
Now, do you think there was a mindset change for you when you went from the mindset of I'm freelance writing to I'm actually in the business of writing? And when do you think that happened?
I think that started happening in that year that I did 40,000 in revenue online in 2015. So that was the year I started to realize that I was already making enough online to cover my mortgage payment, but I was starting to realize I could make enough money online to cover my life. And anything that you do that's really fun that you enjoy as a hobby, when you go from wanting to do it to having to do it, the enjoyment kind of can go away a little bit. And that definitely has happened with me with writing a bit. There's definitely days that I just feel like I just have to go sit down and write something. Sometimes it happens at really weird hours. Like we usually go to bed early because our daughter's up early. No matter what time we go to bed. So for us, 9:30 is pretty late. But sometimes at might be 8:45, 9 o'clock at night, and I just have this idea. I just have to write it down. Sometimes you just have to go with it. So it's all sorts of different strategies will get you to that route you want to get to. But remember, if you're looking at it as a business, you have to treat it like a business, and that means bookkeeping. You should be doing this anyway, keeping all your business finances separate from your personal finances so you can write off deductions. If you spend money on your business, you don't have to pay taxes on that. There's certain benefits of really treating it like a business. So for me, I kind of went into it in the beginning thinking of it like a business, but it was really going to FinCon and being a part of a community called the KZ, which was an old personal finance blogging community. It's still around, but not as active as it used to be. In both of those places, when I saw other people getting this big business-like success online, I just started emulating and learning from them, and that's when the mindset shift happened.
Now, something I noticed that you're really good at is your PR. It seems like you have like over 100 different guest posts that you've done, interviews that you've been on, podcasts. How do you take your approach to PR? And how can our listeners learn from that?
Yeah. So in the way I look at it, if I can be helpful to somebody, I'm kind of like building up good karma in my karma bank. So I'm always happy to reach out and respond to other writers who need quotes and sources. Because I know most of the writing I do, I don't need quotes and sources. I get to be the expert with my unique background, but as we were talking about, journalists don't always have that expertise. They just know how to write. So they often need experts and sources, and some publications and websites, regardless of your expertise, want you to have sources. So I know what it's like needing sources myself, so I try to make it as easy as possible on other writers to use me as a source. And there's a handful of different places you can find if you're looking for opportunities to be a source. Probably the biggest and most popular is HARO, which is Help a Reporter Out. I think it's HARO, HARO.com or something like that. If you Google HARO, it'll come up. So that's a place where writers and journalists just put questions out there where they're looking for sources. So if you sit there and just you subscribe to their list, you'll get an email up to 3 times a day just with people looking for sources. So it's an easy way to respond. Another place, a place that's really been the best for me of becoming a source and an expert is, I keep mentioning FinCon because it's such a big deal to me. It's through that community. There's an amazing community of personal finance bloggers out of FinCon, and there's a Facebook group for FinCon attendees, and there's some other niche Facebook groups for people who want to be a source for other FinCon attendees. So I just pay attention and stay active and respond as much as I can and try to put myself out there, because people might find me through my blog to hire me, but they might find me through being an expert on xyzmoney.com or whatever website I answered a question for, and say, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They click on that link, they find, oh, look, he's a writer for hire. I like what he's doing. I'll reach out. So the more positive help you can do for other writers and for the general public who wants to learn about whatever topic you're the expert in, go out there and do that. You're not going to make any money directly from it, but if you do it and do it pretty consistently over time, good things will happen.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I think it shows impressive social proof, because when I was scrolling through your list, I'm like, wow, this guy is like expert. That's the first thing you think. When you see that many interviews, that many guest posts, you automatically link that to someone as an expert.
Yeah, that's part of that fake it till you make it thing, right? When I started, 8-9 years ago, there weren't all of these articles linking to me and mentioning me and talking about how, Eric Rosenberg, personal finance expert, thinks ... That took time to build up. So by investing that time, I'm now getting the dividends.
Right. And how do you create social proof as a writer and a blogger? What steps do you think are the best first steps to take when you're trying to develop really good social proof across the platforms?
Yeah, well, do not put up a thing on your website that says join 9 other subscribers. Yeah, so it takes some time before you have that critical mass where you can start sharing numbers and saying, hey, look, here's what I'm doing. Like, oh, here's my podcast download numbers. Here's the number of subscribers on my email list at my website. All that stuff takes time to build up. So you're not going to start day one with great social proof, but you can start with testimonials and things like that. So like when I started, the first book I wrote, I'm working on like what I call a real book now. The first book I wrote was only about 50, 60 pages, an ebook. It's available on Amazon. It's called The Personal Finance Arsenal. And when I wrote that, I gave a few copies out to some friends and people who I thought would really benefit from it or are experts in that topic and could give good feedback. And at the end, I wrote to some friends and I said, hey, did you read this? Was it helpful? Would you give me a testimonial? And most of them said, yes, absolutely. I mean, if you gave them a free book and it's your first book and they're your actual friends or people like that, no one on the internet knows that you're good friends with whatever person whose name you put as a testimonial. Most testimonials don't even use people's last names. It'll say like, Emily C or something. So I actually had an Emily that I sent a copy of my book to, and she wrote back and said, oh, these tips have helped me do X, Y, and Z with my finances to improve my situation. I took that quote, dropped it on the landing page for the book. there's social proof right there, someone who it helped. So you don't need to be Pat Flynn or Tim Ferriss to have social proof. You can start at day one just by getting one or two other people you've helped to comment on how you helped them.
Oh, dude, excellent tips. Thank you so much. Now, I want to give you a chance to talk about your book a little bit, the Personal Finance Arsenal, because, of course, we're writers, man. We're totally not thinking money, but talk about your book a little bit, how you wrote the book, and then, what the goal of the book is.
Yeah, so that book, I actually wrote it like 6 or 7 years ago, so it's a bit dated now. But the idea was, this at the beginning of my blogging, I was really excited about all these cool new tools and websites that were starting to show up. The first big one was mint.com that let you import all of your personal finance data automatically and see pretty charts and graphs to give you information on where your money is going so you can build a budget that was automatically tracked. So I figured out there were all these cool tools like that people had no idea about. And if they used them, it would save them time and improve their finances. And there wasn't any book about it, so I decided to write it. That's why I mentioned it's kind of dated now, because those tools change so quickly over time. But I didn't make a ton of money, didn't sell a ton of copies. It was just self-published on Amazon. If you actually have Amazon Prime, you can get a copy for free on your Kindle. But for me, it was more of a learning experience than a success story, I'd say. Although it is pretty cool to have my own Amazon author page there. And when I finish my book I'm working on now, which I wrote about an eighth of it on a long plane ride and have not done a ton of work since. But it's sitting on my desktop. I'm actually looking at the file right now, staring at my computer screen that should say "Open me and finish this book." It's going to be called It's going to be called Personal Profitability, the same name as my blog and podcast, and we'll get into the 4 core pillars of personal profitability that I use to guide my writing and podcasts, and that's to earn more, spend mindfully, grow your wealth, and live a better life through mindful personal finance. So I know mindful is in there twice, but I think that's really what it's about. It's about how you have this relationship with your money and you can take control. And rather than having your money be an excuse for not doing the things you want to do in life, you should use it to do the things you do want to do in life, whether or not that's, a lot of people want to keep up with the Joneses. Screw keeping up with the Joneses. They have $10,000 in credit card debt. Just put the money into what you want. And whether that's cable TV or going to Starbucks or taking international trips, whatever it is you value and care about most, you should be able to do it, and your money shouldn't prevent you from doing it. You just have to make decisions and prioritize. So maybe coffee doesn't get in the way of you taking a trip to Europe. So coffee isn't that valuable to you. Cut out the coffee, focus on the Europe thing. But if you love coffee and you want to go to Europe, find something else you can cut that'll allow you to do both. Because we have limited dollars, but that doesn't mean we have limited opportunities.
Right. Very true. I tell you, man, finance is it's one of those things, man. It's one of those make or break subjects.
Yeah.
And it takes time to master, like anything else. There's so much to learn about finance, whether it's business finance or personal finance.
Yeah, especially for writers who come with a journalism background, because anyone who's in journalism school or has recently gone knows there's a lot of people who want to be writers and only a limited number of opportunities to do that full time. So, basic economics, supply and demand, that means writers generally don't get paid that much to start out. So going into writing with a good foundation in personal finance, I think is so important. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a ton of debt, on credit cards, and it's just going to delay the things you want to do in life. So, if you want to become a writer before you start, maybe you should pick up a good personal finance book and get some insights before you get going.
Awesome. And do you have one that you recommend?
A couple of my favorites. One is The Automatic Millionaire by David Bach. It was actually the last book I read before I started my personal finance blog. Another one I really like, particularly for millennials, is I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi. I love the title. I think it's kind of like, it's cocky and fun, which I know Ramit, and he is kind of cocky and fun. So it's a good fit for him. But either one of those will give you a pretty good foundation on how to kind of set up systems for long-term finance success.
Yeah. I've been to Ramit's website and he's in his pajamas.
Yeah, that sounds like him. Yeah, no, he crushes it. He's amazing. I mean, he started doing personal finance classes when he was a Stanford student for free, just for fun, because he realized other students needed help with their finances. And if you go way back to the old archives on his website, some of the posts are so bad, which if you go to my website, you'll probably find the same thing. But over time, writing is just like anything else. We get better at it over time. You get better at it if you practice.
Oh
So
yeah,
keep at it.
absolutely, absolutely. If you're not embarrassed by your early stuff, then you haven't grown. And I mean, I remember John Lee Dumas talking about that, about EO Fire, how bad he was in the beginning. And I've listened to some of my early podcasts. That's just how it is.
Yeah, we all get better at things over time. It's like in Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I think should be required reading for anyone who's going to have a kid ever at any point in their life. It's like the best parenting book I ever read was by a statistician, not by a parenting expert. But one thing they talk about in that is the concept of a 10,000 hour rule, that it takes 10,000 hours working on something to become a true expert. So if you are doing anything as a side hustle, it's going to take you a long time to hit 10,000 hours. But that doesn't mean you should give up, because who's done 10,000 hours doing things? In the book, he talked about the Beatles. They spent 10,000 hours just playing music all day in crappy bars in Germany before they became the Beatles that we knew. There are people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs who spent tens of thousands of hours probably as kids working on computer terminals that ran on punch cards because they happened to live in places where they had access to it. And 10,000 hours later, they became billionaire software entrepreneurs. So same thing with writing too. I don't imagine Malcolm Gladwell or whoever your favorite writer is out there. It's very unlikely they were amazing with the first thing they wrote. And there's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, people build writing up as a skill, just like anything else.
Yeah, everything gets better with use. The more you create content, the more you write, the better you get, and then you go to the next level, and then finally you've kind of gotten to where you want to be.
Yeah.
So, man, Eric, it's been great to have you on. Any parting wisdom or parting advice you'd like to give to our listening audience of writers and authors?
Yeah, just start. Day one, you can open up Word or Pages or Google Docs or pull out a notepad. I don't see where a notepad does me any good because everything I write is online. But whatever it is that you like to write on, just do it. You don't need permission. You don't need someone to tell you to start. You don't even need to wait for encouragement. And when I started my blog, I didn't even tell my parents about it. I remember it was like years later. It was like coming out of the closet. I was like, Mom, I'm a blogger. She's like, what's a blogger? So, but I didn't need anyone, even my mom, who was the most encouraging person in my entire life. I didn't need her to tell me to start. I just started. So don't wait, just do it. And odds are, if you love it and you stick with it and do it for a long time, you'll keep getting better. And eventually there are great opportunities to make money.
Awesome. And Eric, let our audience know where they can find you online.
Sure. So if you like listening to podcasts, which I assume you do because you're listening right now, you can check out my podcast. It's called the Personal Profitability Podcast. That's in Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to podcasts. My blog is at personalprofitability.com. You can find the podcast there as well. And just for you guys, for the listeners, I have a freebie giveaway. If you go to personalprofitability.com/bootcamp, I have a 7-day course, absolutely free. It comes, you'll get an email every day for a week with a link to a video. They're about 10 to 15 minutes long, and they get you started on that path to personal profitability. And it ends with helping you start your first side hustle. So if you want to get your finances in order or make a little bit more, that's the place to go.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, it's always great talking writing with other writers, man. So excellent.
Well, get out there, everyone, and grab your keyboard or your typewriter, your pen, and get to it.
All right. Thanks a lot. Hey, author. Chris here. I want to tell you about a program that I'm really excited about called Group Gold. For a long time, I would post on my Facebook fan page only to find crickets. Very few interactions, very few connections. That is before I discovered Facebook groups through the program Group Gold. Facebook Group Gold program is the most complete one of its kind to help you grow, engage, and monetize your Facebook group. Mark Mawhinney, the program creator, will walk you through every aspect of how to create, manage, and run your Facebook group so that your tribe is coming to you. It makes it easier, doesn't it? When you've got people interacting with you because they want to be there. That's the beauty of Facebook groups over Facebook fan pages. Ever since I started the Facebook Group Gold program, I've been growing my group, building my audience, and I've got people in there who are active and who want to be there, hanging out with me every single day. You can have that too. Just visit my website, www.readywritelaunch.com, and under the offer tab, select Group Gold. Then you can see for yourself the magic of Facebook groups.